homework was 19 to 23. It was all about the big why. And so I'm just curious, are there a couple of you who wanted to unmute and just kind of share that exercise? And if you got to a big why, if you want to share what that is, if you didn't get there or you don't want to share it, just kind of what that exercise did for you and how that kind of went, because it is crazy important to have an understanding of what's pulling you forward. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, which is why it was homework. I just want to make sure that if you had any questions or wanted to share anything that you could do so. John and then Marlene.
All righty. So I did my homework last Ignite session, but I just wanted to share my big why is to become financially independent and get my time back, enlighten the unenlightened, and help everyone achieve wealth. And then I got a little photo. I don't know if you can see because of the glare, but hold on. There we go. Oh, you can't see, but it's a guy in front of a house because I plan on buying rental properties, and then an agent with a for sale sign because I plan on becoming a successful agent.
Got it. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Right. And so are you open for just a quick word or two about what you just said?
Are you asking me or everyone?
You.
Oh, yeah, shoot.
So the one thing I want to point out about big whys being as effective as possible is make sure they're as specific as possible. Right. So read your first line, your first sentence again, John.
To become financially independent and get my time back.
Right. And so make sure that you understand what financial independence actually looks like. What is the number that's attached to that? What is that freedom number for you? What is the goal in terms of time frame? Do you have a deadline around it? Right? Get your time back. Well, what kind of time? Do you want your entire day? Do you want 1 day a week? Do you want 15 minutes every week? Make sure that it doesn't have to necessarily be written into the why. I just want you to get as specific as possible so that you know exactly what you're aiming for in each of those pieces. So just as an example for everybody, write these things out and then get real clarity around what that looks like, because you have to know when you've actually arrived at it. You have to know when to put a check in the box. You have to know when that's become a win for you and you're going to morph into something different. Marlene and then Moses.
Okay. My big why is helping others create their dream helps me to create mine.
Love it. Right. And that's something that really comes from service, right? And assistance. And it's funny to me because Marlene, you and I have never met one another in person. And as a matter of fact, I don't think you and I have ever spoken except for the last 2 days, right? We met on Tuesday via this class in Zoom. And just from the questions you ask and the conversations that we've had, it's clear to me how deeply customer service actually matters to you, right? Because those have been kind of the questions that you've asked about and the paths that you've gone down to make sure that what we're talking about marries with your version or your vision of creating a real service-oriented business. So it's not a surprise to me that your why kind of encapsulates that. It seems very consistent with, and again, we've never really met except for the short interchanges on Zoom. So consistency is awesome. So that's well done. Moses.
My biggest why is to pay off all my debts and come back to zero. Right now, I am close to 7-figure debt, which is very, very stressful. And the second why is I want to educate investors, the first-time home buyers. I always gear them towards buying multifamily and then educate them how to manage it. And then I'm sure they're gonna hire me again to help them buy more investment properties. That's my laser focus right now.
Love it. Right, and the reality is that debt is typically paralyzing, right? So the faster you can eliminate debt from your world and move to a place of I love what Moses said, because what he said was, I want to move back to zero. So, and the part he didn't say was, so then I can climb to higher levels. I will tell you that part of why when I coach with people one-on-one, you don't get to coach with me unless we have real specific conversations about net worth, right? And the idea is, if you don't understand a personal balance sheet and don't know your net worth, from a business owner's perspective, it's difficult to understand what kind of profits your business needs to make to allow you to move from where, if you're in a negative net worth scenario, to move from where you are to zero, because you have to get to zero before you can get positive, right? And I'll tell you a quick story. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was working with someone, and I asked them to do a net worth exercise. They had never done it before, and they really pushed back on me and said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to know. It's not good news. It's like, how could you not want to know? Like that's like being lost in the forest, and there's one of those oh goodness, what do you call it? Like a little, what's a forest billboard called? What's a billboard in the forest?
A trail map?
Yeah, that's it, Brett. Thank you. So like a little trail map, and it says you are here, so that once you know where you are, you know how to get back out, but you refuse to look at the map, and you just keep wandering around, and all the trees look the same. Like, how could you ever go someplace if you don't know where you are? And so he finally did the exercise, and he came back to me and he said, see, I knew it. It's negative. My net worth is negative, whatever it was. And I said, okay, well, let's be clear about what that tells you. Is it something to bring judgment to? Well, he thought so. We had a conversation around why that doesn't help you, right? Don't bring judgment to it. Just acknowledge it. Okay, that's where I am. Okay, well, where do you want to be? Well, I want to be up here. Okay, what do you have to get through first? You have to go through zero. So could we set a goal for you to move from where you are to zero? Let's now work on the specific action items that you are going to do over the course of the next year or two. It took him 2 years, by the way. What are you doing over the course of the next 2 years to move yourself from negative to zero? And I kind of forgot about the conversation. We stopped working together, and he came back to me 2 years later and said, hey, I wanted to tell you something pretty awesome. I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, I just did my personal, this was like on January 9th or something. He just did my year-end balance sheet for year-end this past year. I said, that's great. Where is it? And he said, it's zero. And he was so excited to have a zero net worth because it was fully 6 figures better than where he had started, right? And so, and I said to him, I want you to plot that on graph paper, right? Because the path is in the math, always. Who loves math as much as I do? You should. You're not allowed to say within earshot of me, I'm not a numbers person, because that doesn't work, right? Numbers are the language of business. And so if you're not a numbers person, become one, right? Start to fall in love with what the numbers tell you. And so when I described for him that the path is in the math and said, I want you to chart that. Where did you start? What was the previous year? And where are you today? And then I want you to draw a line and put an arrow on the front of it. What is that trajectory? Because that was the impetus for him to just keep going and building, because he saw that trajectory, but he had to get to zero first. I just love that story because it illustrates the value of knowing where you're at. Don't put your head in the sand. Regardless of what we're talking about, don't put your head in the sand. Just look in the mirror, look at the map, do the math, look at the bank account, know where you are so that you can then start taking action to move and get someplace else. Tony, then Marion.
Yeah, just real quick, I want to acknowledge Moses and sort of tip my hat to him for bringing what he brought up, because number one, he didn't have to. And number two, Moses and I have something in common. We're both in debt. and you know, it can be scary. But my wife and I had a conversation about it over the weekend, and I said, you know what? Let's make this fun. You know, it doesn't have to be torture. And we're not the first people that have been through this. And You know, and most of the United States is in some sort of debt. We just happen to be in a line of work that, although it might be hard and it's got its druthers, you know, we can dig ourselves out of it pretty friggin' fast. So
Yeah.
thanks, Moses.
Yeah, 100%. And the simple reality is that debt doesn't have to be torture and it doesn't have to be scary as long as you're in action around it, right? It's only scary when you hide from it, right? Because there's always a path. There's a way to move through that. And I love what Tony just said. You happen to be in an industry where if you owe $100,000 in whatever debt, or you owe $200,000, well, I'm going to show you the process in about 5 minutes about how to figure out how many appointments a week you need to go on to sell a certain number of houses to earn that amount of money. Again, the path is in the math. You just have to know what the math says and then go implement. Remember what we talked about on day one? It was number something or other. 24. Can't afford X? Well, just go sell another house. Right? At some point, it is as easy as that. You have to just wrap your head around the simplicity of selling another house and then go and implement. Marion.
Hi, just very quickly, how do you factor in risk? And the risk in the process, the risk of any property, and the risk in your plan. And depending on your starting point and net worth or other types of measures, some people have a risk tolerance is very individual, you know, and it's very real. How do you work that into how you work and how you plan?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I'll give you my answer. I don't know how wonderful an answer this is, but I will give you my answer to that. Understanding that this is an answer from a relatively risk tolerant human, right? I am not terribly risk averse, right? I wouldn't have done 75% of the things I've done in my life if I were more risk averse. So I am relatively risk tolerant. But I'm risk tolerant. I'm also a high C, which means that I am like a classic overthinker, and I like the charts and graphs. And I want to know the pro forma of something. I want to understand something before I just jump, right? And so being risk tolerant, but also being that cautious thinker style person, sometimes translates into schizophrenia, just by the way, right? and oftentimes requires me to stop, give myself a specific time period to think about something. Okay, do you want to do X? And I'm paralyzed. I'm like, okay, I have to think about it. I have to think about it. I must say that 95 times a day, right? I have to think about it. If I don't say it out loud, I'm saying it to myself. I have to think about it. I have to think about it. So for those of you who suffer from that, understand you're not alone, right? I have to think about it. But what I've learned to do is just give myself a certain time period. Okay, I will think about it until 5 o'clock, and then I will make a decision. And sometimes my decisions are yes, and sometimes they're no, but at least I've taken action then. And if the decision is yes, I ask myself the question, is if the outcome of this is the worst possible outcome, can you live with that? And if my answer is yes, then I just go on my merry way. If the answer is no, well, then maybe I do something slightly different, or maybe I do something that, or maybe I don't do that at all. But it's stepping myself through the process of risk tolerance to get, it's questions that lead to decision points. And as I get to my decision point about what's the worst that could happen, right? If the worst that could happen is X, and if that shows up, can I recover from that? Is there a fix to that? Is there a solution? Can I just do it again and solve that issue? Or would it be the end of me? Does that help at all, Marion?
Yes, thank you. It's almost a version of the way you explained pros and cons, that you walk through, you break things down and walk through the paces.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's right. That's right. Erica.
All right, so my goals that I wrote down yesterday on my purpose is the one to be able to put my daughters through college without them having any student loan debt. And also, I want to gift them, one of my daughters is in photography. I would like to give her a photography studio. And the other one wants to be, she wants to own her own daycare. And I would like to give her a space for her daycare when they both graduate college. And also, just to have financial stability. And I didn't put a number on that, but I'll know when I can wake up in the morning and book a vacation and won't have to plan for it months and weeks in advance.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so again, thank you for sharing that. And if you're okay with me using some of that as an example to just get to dive deeper, right? When you're working on your big why, there's no snorkeling allowed, right? You have to dive deep. So keep just pushing through and get to kind of the roots of some of these things. How old are your daughters, Erica?
I have two 10th graders. They're 15, and I have a 9th grader. She's 14.
Okay, so 15 and 14, right? And so 15 and 14, that gives you a certain period of time. You're now on deadline, right? With or working against a deadline for college. You know, maximally you have 3 years with your 15-year-olds, maybe 4 years with your 14-year-old. Then the next step is, do you know how much college is going to cost? Times 3, right? That's the amount of money you need to save so that everyone, or be earning so that they can show up to college and not have to have any student loans, right? Just get real clear about that. And the other thing I would do, just having almost finished paying for college myself, is whatever you think it's going to cost, add more, because the costs are not going down in the next 3 or 4 years. I mean, maybe something spectacular will happen, but they're not going down. So just get clarity around that. What does it cost to buy a photography studio? What does it cost to buy a daycare? Like let's get clear about what that is so that you know exactly how many houses that turns into over the course of the next number of years, so you can set goals very specifically. That's called goal setting to the now. For those of you who are reading The One Thing this week, right? Because that's one of our books this week. Goal setting to the now means, okay, in 5 years, I need this. Or maybe in Erica's situation, she's got 4 years till her youngest goes to college plus 4 years. So in 8 years, I need to have accomplished X, and I need certain pieces of it earlier. So what does that 8-year plan look like? And then you rewind it to what it has to look like in year 7, year 6, year 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then once you're in 1, you work monthly backwards until you're in this month. And then you work weekly backwards until you're at today. So you literally start to say, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow to end up where I want to be for my daughters 8 years from now? If that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Sure thing. Nikki.
Hi, so my ultimate goal is to make money while I sleep. But I do have smaller goals to get me to that point. And some of my smaller goals are basically making sure I have funds for my son's college. He's 7, so I have time. And making sure I educate my clients on, my mind just went blank, sorry. Making sure I get enough education to educate clients and be able to have long-term clients in the future. But my ultimate is to make money while I sleep.
I love it. And again, just not to sound like a broken record, make sure that you do a deep dive on what that really looks like. The first thing I can tell you, for those of us who have been through it, my kids were 7 like yesterday. And then suddenly the first college bill arrived. I'm like, oh, that happened very quickly, right? So that 10 years flies by. So be clear about, again, goal set to the now. 10 years from now, I need to be in this position to pay cash for college. What does that look like in year 9, 8, 7? Rewind it all the way back, like I just explained. And so now you know what you need to set aside every single year. What's the vehicle you're going to use? And how many houses do you have to sell to make sure that you have that amount of money extra, right? Because some of it is business expense, some of it is taxes, some of it you live on. How much extra do I need to make sure the college is taken care of? The other thing on Nikki's side is, I love that concept of making money while you sleep. Just be cautious that you're not unspecific about that. Because think about it. If I drive past Nikki's house every night and I throw a quarter on her lawn, she's now making money while she sleeps. Right? And over the course of a year, I don't know, what's a quarter times 365 days? I don't know, let's do it. 365 times a quarter.
$85 maybe?
Like 91 bucks.
Yeah.
Right? And so again, it's clear that's not what Nikki means. She doesn't mean I'd like to have somebody come and throw a quarter on my front lawn every morning. However, that does check the box of making money while you sleep. So make sure that it's clear. What kind of money? How passive? Via what vehicles? How much? How much a month? How much annually when you go through the process, right? So get really clear about what all that looks like. Anna, bring us home.
So my big why for
You muted again, Anna. There you go.
sorry, 200,000 my net income for this year, and also I wanna buy a house on 5th Street in Stamford.
That's specific.
And also I wanna donate 1,000 to each of these. I wanna donate to the church where I belong, 1,000 to kids in Kenya, and 1,000 to ocean cleanup. That's my
Got it.
goal.
I love it. I love it. Right. So those get very specific then. And that helps start to be able to check those boxes. Right. The one thing I would do, Anna, is now prioritize those. Which are you going to do first? Right. The first $1,000 extra that comes, is it going to the oceans, to the church, or to the kids in Kenya? Which are you funding first? Or are you sending $333 to each of them? And then the next 1,000, you're doing $333 to each of them again. Right. You see how remember, a dollar that doesn't know where it's going remains unearned. So you have to be very, very specific, and then get real clarity around what you're going to do with it. All right, guys. So here's what I want to do. I want to just spend a minute on the whiteboard, which means you're going to lose me for a bit, and you're going to go to a whiteboard. That's going to look like this. All righty, there's the whiteboard. Let me just turn my camera off so that you don't have to stare at my belly button. All righty. So what I want to do just for the next 10 minutes or so is walk you through the math of going from figuring out what kind of money you're looking to make and what that really means in terms of homes that you sell, but then even more important, appointments that you need to go on, schedule and then go on to hit those sale numbers. All right, so let's start with, let's just pick a number, right? And humor me, and I'm just gonna pick $100,000, right? So $100,000 is what you are interested in earning. And that $100,000 is to you, right? You then have to pay your business expenses, including your taxes and your personal whatevers, but that's the money that you see. So the first thing you have to do with that $100,000, right, is you have to gross it up a bit, because you do have the market center as an expense. And so let's just agree to use $38,000 as a cap number, right? So you're going to add what you pay Keller Williams. Now you're at 138,000. The other number, and let's put that aside for now. The other number you need is your average commission that you earn every time you close something. Right now, if you have your numbers because you've been in the business for at least 2 years and can look and see exactly how much your average commission is, that's awesome. If you don't have 2 years, I want you to use some averages. And so from the past year, the Market Center average sale price or so, it's actually a little higher than this, but that was because 2021 was such a powerful year. So we're going to use 450 as an average sale price. And the average commission is 2.5% in our market centers. Now, if you do the math on 450 at 2.5%, you get 11,250. So using these averages, every time you sell a house, you earn 11,250, right? Now, again, you have splits with the market center, but we already grossed up the numbers to take that into consideration. So the way you then figure out how many sales you need is you take this number here, this $138,000, you just divide it by the money that you make every time you close a property. And so if you take $138,000 and divide it by 11,250, you get 13 closed sales. Everyone see how I did that? 13 closed sales based on these assumptions. Any questions? And you're going to have to just kind of shout them out because I can't see the, if you're unmuting, I can't see that you're unmuting. So any questions, just kind of shout them out. No? Okay, so here's the fun part. This is units sold. That's an annual, right, in a year, 13 units sold in a year in order for you to gross $138,000. And then when you pay the market center, you take home the 100. We're going to make this simple. And the simplicity here is we're going to ask you to multiply that number, that 13 number. I'm going to just come back to you for a second. We're going to take that number, we're going to multiply it by 3.5. And the reason we're multiplying by 3.5 is because we took conversions on each side, right? We took a 4-to-1 conversion on the listing side, which means for every 4 sellers that you meet with and have a listing appointment, you'll list 2 of them. And of the 2 that you put on the market, you'll sell and get to closing with 1 of them. Now, in the last 18 months, that number has been much higher, right? Almost everything that's gone on the market has sold. However, I don't want you to build your assumptions off of the hottest real estate market that we've ever seen, like since the dawn of time, because it will not stay that way forever. So these assumptions say you meet with 4 sellers, you take 2, you don't get 2, but you do take 2. And then 1 of those goes on to sell. On the buy side, the number is really 3-to-1. For every 3 new buyers that you meet with, you'll sign 2 of them and you'll sell 1 of them a house. In the last 12 months, that almost seems like a dream, right? Because so many of you have struggled finding buyers' houses in the current market that we're in. So if you have 3-to-1 on the buyer side and 4-to-1 on the listing side, if you blend them together, you get 3.5-to-1. So for every 3.5 appointments you go on, you will create 1 closed piece of business, which is why when we go back to our whiteboard. You take 13 and you multiply it by 3.5. And when you do that math, 13 by 3.5 is 46. 46 appointments in a year. Now, how many weeks are there in a year? Well, there's 52 weeks in a year, right? Do you work every single week of the year? Right, the answer is no. Even those of you who work a lot, you don't work 52 weeks a year. Right, most people don't work the week of Thanksgiving very much. They don't work between Christmas and New Year's. You go on vacation a week or two, right? So I use 48 weeks. If your number is lower than that because you have family in Europe and for late July into all of August, you take 5 weeks and you're not around, well, then your number may be a little bit lower than 48. However, I use 48 weeks in a year for this example. So 46 total appointments for the year divided by 48 gives you 1, right? 1 new appointment every single week that you work should yield you 13 closed sales, which is here, which should yield you 138K gross in commission income. Now, somebody tell me how that sounds. What do you think of the math? Did you understand it?
Mhm.
So what does that look like? In order to earn your 138,000, did 46 appointments in the year sound a little daunting?
No,
When you divided it by the weeks, did it get better? When it turned out to be just 1 a week? How does 1 new appointment a week sound? Does it sound doable? Right?
absolutely.
Yeah, so, right? So, because here's the thing, if you, oh, I forgot to turn my camera on. Ha 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 ha. Sorry about that. There we go. Right. So if you raised your hand and signed up to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna be a real estate professional now full time. Like, what else are you doing besides finding 1 appointment every single week? Now, I want to be clear. In order for those numbers to really show up, it's not 1 appointment, it's 1 new appointment each week. Right? If I hire Brett as my buyer's agent and we go out and she shows me a whole bunch of houses on Sunday, and then she shows me a whole bunch more on Thursday, well, that's the same week, but I'm the same person. Unless I'm buying 2 houses, I don't count a second time. She could take me out every single day that week. I'm still only 1 new appointment. Does that make sense to everybody? And with the math that we just did, it doesn't matter if you're focused on buyers or sellers because it all just kind of comes out in the wash. Focus instead on appointments. What am I going to do to find my 1 new appointment this week? Now, some of you are thinking, all right, well, I don't really want to make $100,000. I'm more like in the $50,000 range. Here's the fun news for you. There's no such thing as a half an appointment a week. So the minimum number is just 1. So focus yourself on 1 a week, 1 a week, 1 a week. And the results will start to show up. Some of you have bigger goals than that $100,000. Well, your number might be 2 a week. It might be 4 a week. Right? I work with some people, some bigger teams, their numbers are like 12 and 14 a week. They in order to fund the business, they need appointments at a really high level. Right? For the longest time, my sales team's number was between 5 and 6 a week, 5 and 6 a week, new appointments we had to figure out. And when you build business plans around source of business, those things start to show up. Now I can tell you, I'm gonna open it up for questions in a minute about appointments, finding appointments and calculating your appointments. But I want to encourage you to trust what I am saying here, that you can grow a business substantially by focusing on just that one metric. One metric. I have a husband and wife husband and wife team as coaching clients, and they came to me and said, okay, we make about $100,000 a year, and it seems, if there's two of us, so that's like 50K for each of us, and it's what fuels our household, and we're struggling. Okay, well, where do you want to go? Well, we want to go to $300,000. Okay, so you want to triple the business in what period of time? Well, we thought we would do it over the course of, go from 100 to 150, from 150 to 225, and from 225 to 300. So it's 3 years. Well, 3 years later, they just had an almost $400,000 year. 377 was their number from last year. And the way we stepped them up every single year is focusing them on appointments. All we ever talked about on our coaching calls was, where are you finding more appointments? What's working? What's not working? Are you pushing heavier on that one because that seemed to work really well last week? What sources have we left untapped? What sources are you paying somebody else to work on for you? You don't want to call expireds? Okay, well, someone can call expireds for you. You just have to be willing to pay them to do it and then reap the rewards when they get the appointments, right? There are companies out there who will do that for you if that's not your thing. Do you have a goal every single time you host an open house to find a new appointment? Some of you have a goal to have 30 people walk through the house. Stop doing that. Just have a goal of one new appointment that comes from your open house. Because if one unrepresented person wanders in and says, hey, I want to buy a house. Well, guess what? Successful open house. One person came. Open houses should not be judged based on the number of attendees. They should be judged based on the number of appointments you find at said open house. Lead generation time should not be judged based on how many calls you made or how many people you talked to. It should be judged on how many new appointments did you schedule for the week. Those folks I mentioned, in year one, they texted me every single day by 7 to let me know how many new appointments that they had gone on that day. Again, their number to get where they had to go started with 3, and it's now 6 or 7. And so they would just track it. Monday, 0 of 3. Tuesday, 0 of 3. Wednesday, 1 of 3. Thursday, 2 of 3. Friday, 2 of 3. Saturday, 2 of 3. Now we're short. So guess what next week was? 1 of 4, because we had to make it up. But it was an accountability and a massive tracking towards just those appointment numbers. And by focusing on that, remember, what you focus on expands. So if you focus on appointments, guess what? You get more of appointments. And because appointments is the top of the funnel, everything that you push in there then goes through the funnel. You spit more out. When you put more in, you spit more out the bottom. So closings go up, income goes up. Is this making sense? You want to know how I helped your team leaders grow our offices from fewer than 100 people each to now over 600 of you out of 2 different market centers? Same way. Same way. They were the 2-10-40. We worked 2-10-40, and that was 2 appointments a day, 10 a week, 40 a month. With a 4-to-1 conversion ratio, that means they should be hiring 10 agents every single month to fuel our growth. Again, the path is in the math. I know some of you are kind of thinking like, I thought he said we were getting to the practical stuff today. This doesn't seem practical to me. Guys, if this doesn't sound practical, we're in trouble. Because this is the root of how you're going to grow your business. You've got to know what your appointment number is based on your goals. And then you need to figure out how you're going, and we're going to spend the next week and a half walking through all the different ways that you can create appointments for yourselves. But you also have to figure out how you're going to hold yourself accountable to hitting those numbers. Like that number that you come up with should be a non-negotiable number for you. That's why it has to be your number. Just get married to it. Figure out what that looks like. Make sense? Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions, comments, concerns about your appointment number, because your homework clearly is going to be figuring out your appointment number based on what we just went through. Any questions, comments, or concerns around that?
Rick, I just want to bring this up. I did this, and what about accounting for expenses?
Well, so
doing that?
accounting for expenses. So what you're going to do is that net number, that $100,000. Hold on, let me just put this back up. This $100,000 is the money that goes to you. And what that means is everything you have to pay comes out of that. If you're going to pay, there we go. If you're going to pay business expenses, your taxes, your mortgage, whatever, that's the money you have to do it from. So if that has to be bigger than $100,000 to pay the mortgage, pay the IRS, pay your business expenses, and oh, by the way, don't forget, whatever your debts happen to be, you need to figure out a chunk of earning to pay that off this year as well. Doesn't have to go to zero, but what's the chunk of it, right? Is it an extra $25,000 that you're going to earn? How many additional houses is that? By the way, the answer is 2.5 if you look at the math we did, right? So you round that to 3. If I sell an extra 3, I have the extra money to pay off a chunk of my debt. But that's where all that goes, Tony. That number, you have to figure out what your personal expenses are, what your business expenses are, what the taxes, what your tax burden is going to be, and I call it a plus. What's your plus? If
This is the short form.
This is absolutely the short form. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. What else? That's it? No other questions? So please note, with no other questions, here's what I hear. I hear, wow, that's cool. Starting tomorrow, I'll know exactly what my number is and start to work towards hitting it between tomorrow and next Tuesday when I meet with you again. That's what I hear. Now there's some panicked faces on screens.
I have a quick question. So when you say your number, is it a combination of your appointment number and your number that you have in your mind of what you want your earnings to be? It's it's both numbers, right?
Well, the number that I want you to focus, you're going to use the income number to calculate your number. Right. So the income number is kind of where you start it all.
Right.
Or if you don't want to start from income, some people say to me, I want to sell 1 house a month. Okay, great. So now hold on, I'm going to go back to the whiteboard again. Isn't the whiteboard fun? I love my little whiteboard. So if the deal is 1 house a month, right? Let's just pretend that there's 13 months because I don't want to have to rewrite it. So here's that 13 for 1 house a month. You get to work the math up to figure out what GCI you're going to do. So what that means is you'll, instead of dividing the 138 by the 11,250, you'll multiply the 13 by the 11,250 to get the 138. So you can say, I want to sell one house a month, and that should gross me 138, which should net me the 100. And oh, by the way, one house a month with 13 units, if you do the math down here, it's one appointment a week. Does that make sense, Brett?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Anyone else on the math?
Rick, it's Erica. I have a question. So when we
Yes,
do our
Erica.
assignment for next week, should we use the 450 that you put down there for the average home price for our market center?
Yes, anybody who doesn't have 2 solid years of experience under their belt to be able to use their numbers, or if you have 2 solid years and you've only really sold a house or 2 a year in each of those years, there's just not a broad enough breadth of information, right? You need more data to really come up with those averages. So if it were me, I would use the market center averages. If the market center averages feel high to you because you work a market that is kind of all smaller houses and condos and not any kind of luxury, well, then you may want to use 350 at 2.5%. If 450 seems really low to you because you work a market that is mostly luxury, remember, even if you work a luxury market, every house you sell is not typically a luxury house. There's always something else thrown in there. But you may want to then move that average sale price up to 550 or 650. You get to make those decisions, right? The only people who are going to use something less than 2.5% as an average commission rate are those of you who are consistently dealing with $1.5 million and above properties where the commission rates are sometimes a little bit lower. Now I'm going to say sometimes, not always, because your commission is always determined by you, not the environment, not the town, not the price point. However, those of you who have played in the 1.8s, the 2.3s, the 3.3s, right? You know that sometimes the number that on the list side of those or the buy side of those is not 2.5, sometimes it's 2, right? So you may want to make an adjustment down to maybe 2.25, whatever. You get to work with those numbers based on the markets that you know that you're working in. However, if you don't have a particular market or you don't have your own data, just use the market center averages and work from there. Because what I find is, regardless of who thinks they're doing what, again, you start to sell houses that are actually selling, and that's typically more in the under $1 million category before you jump over into the larger stuff. Generally speaking, some of you may be exceptions to that. I'm just talking generically. Does that help answer that question?
And what is the price, in your opinion, that luxury price starts at? 500 plus? No, bigger, $1 million.
Yeah, I think the luxury, I have to look at that. The calculation.
Well, I'm sure it would depend on the neighborhood, but anyway.
Well, generally speaking, it's the top 10% of sold listings in any given town in the last rolling 12-month period of time. Whatever the average of the top 10% is, that's pretty much how you determine what the luxury market is in that particular town, right? In Fairfield County as a whole, we typically, don't forget you have Greenwich and you have Darien, you have Westport thrown in there, and so it skews the numbers way up. I think we use, I have to verify this, but I think we use 1.1 or 1.3 as the floor for luxury in Fairfield County. Don't forget, most of you live and work in one of the most expensive counties in the country, right? So the numbers across the country, luxury is determined pretty much at 501 and above, right? Anything over $500,000 is considered luxury. Here, in some of our towns, that's a 3-bedroom raised ranch that needs some work, right? And in some other towns, it's just the work part. It's not even the raised ranch, right? That's what you pay to do the work.
Right.
There's my friend Christine. How I've missed you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Just my 2 cents, just for the luxury division. I'm not sure if that was the question. It is 1.1 in Fairfield County.
Perfect. Thank you. I couldn't remember
Thank you.
if it was 1.1 or 1.3. Thank you, Christine, for that. All righty. So where's my phone? Because my phone is my clock. And I want to see what time it is. Here it is. All right. So
5:23.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. I am going to, there we go. Let's do this. I want to talk with you a little bit about scripts before we finish tonight. So we're kind of back in the book, back in power session number 1 for a smidge, on page number 36. However, before we dive into the material, I want to play you a quick video. This is my good friend, Jeff Glover, who's a real estate agent in the Midwest, who, by the way, since he recorded this video a number of years ago, has gone on to be a massive powerhouse. He's got an incredible business across most of the Midwest. He now has a coaching business and does seminars, and he's really excellent at what he does. So listen intently to Jeff talk about scripts. Take some notes, and we will hear this once we are back.
Hi, I'm Jeff Glover, and I'm going to tell you the top 5 things that you need to know about using scripts. Step 1, you're going to need to get your scripts from a top agent in the office, your team leader, a MAPS coach, or of course Keller Williams University. Step 2, we're going to need to do a total transformation of, instead of talking and telling, of asking questions. Selling isn't telling, selling is asking a series of questions that leads to desired response. So instead of talking so much, we need to get in the habit of asking questions. And asking questions gives us control of the conversation. Control of the conversation gives us our ultimate outcome, which is an appointment set or a closing. Step 3, we need to listen with good intentions. Well, what I mean by that is we need to listen to their answers instead of just listening to them talk and asking another question that comes to mind. For example, instead of asking a seller where they're moving to and then going on to the next question, how soon would you like to be there? Ask them, where are you moving to? And when they give you a response, ask them, what takes you there? Step 4 in becoming better at scripts is we need to learn to mimic, mirror, and match the prospect. What I mean by that is we have to listen to their tone of voice. We have to speed up or slow down based on how fast the prospect is talking. That means when they respond and say, we're moving to Toledo, oh, Toledo, that's exciting. What takes you there? 93% of communication is body language and tonality. And that means only 7% are the words that we say or the questions that we ask. Step 5, we need to take these 5 points and practice them daily. If you think of NFL teams, they practice 50, 60 hours on the practice field for a 1-hour game. Our game is our presentations and our appointments, and we need to practice daily everything that we've learned every single day before we meet with our clients. When it comes to scripts, my biggest aha is that everybody has their own scripts. We're pre-programmed to have scripts, and we're talking and asking questions that are scripted. However, what we found is that most of our own scripts are no good. And so we have to learn the right scripts, the right questions to maintain control of the conversation. Thanks for watching KW Connect. Make it a great day.
Isn't he perky? I love me that Jeff. He's spectacular. All right. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay. I lost you for a minute. So what did you hear in Jeff's little 2 minutes there about scripts? Talk to me about what you heard about scripts from Jeff.
I heard
Right.
that you ask more questions, and that way you gain control of the conversation, thus leading to more closings.
Yeah, 100%, Danielle. That's exactly right. Right. Questions are the key to everything. By the way, questions aren't just the key to growing a big business. Questions are the key to having a big life. Questions are the key to maintaining really powerful relationships with your spouse, with your kids, with your friends, with each other. Right. Questions, they solve everything. Everything. Start to become aware how many questions you ask versus how much talking at people you do. When you're in a one-on-one situation, are you talking at people or are you asking questions and listening? Right? Remember the idea of, what is that phrase? God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion, right? What else, Brett?
I liked what he was saying about the mirroring, because I'm really high energy, and so if you've got clients that are, a little calmer, a little slower, don't be like out of the gate bananas. Calm down. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
you don't have to totally match their energy, because you can be yourself and be your own personality, but blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, Brett makes a really good point. Like mimicking, mirror and matching is a really important concept, and it's tied together with scripts, because mirror and matching is the body language version of scripts, right? Scripts are the verbal, they're the words, but the rest of it, the body language portion, is all about mirror and matching. And what I have, I'll use the example that Brett put on the table, right? Someone who is kind of that high energy style person. If you're across the table from someone who has way lower energy than you, and you just maintain that high pace that you kind of churn and burn with all the time, you're viewed across the table not as somebody with a lot of energy. You're viewed as kind of like slick, as somebody like, why are they talking so fast? I'm not sure I can trust this person because they're talking so fast. Are they trying to get something past me? Right? And which is not your intent at all, that you're just kind of being you, right? But if it's a mismatch of energy or a mismatch in body language or the way someone actually hears you, remember, they will hear you from where they are, not from where you are. And if they're in a different spot, they're now mistrusting you. I'm a fast talker too. I use my hands a lot, and I'm a fast talker. And I learned that the hard way. I'm like, why don't these people love me? I don't get it. And when it was someone whose energy was different than mine, someone who had a slower pace of speech, I sounded like the slick used car salesman. And it wasn't until I learned that I had to, make that adjustment. And as soon as I did, when I understood that someone across from me was a different energy than I was, and I calmed myself down, sort of sat on my hands a little bit, right? To make sure that I was slowing down, remember to breathe and ask more questions. Because one of the best ways to slow yourself down, if this describes you, is ask a question and make sure that the question mark puts an end to your time speaking. Anybody know people who like ask questions and then just continue on and answer the question for you? Like nothing drives me nuttier when someone asks me a question and then tells me the answer. Like, okay, so why did you bother asking me the question if you knew the answer already? And a lot of what we're talking about has to do with the S word and allowing the S word to come in and really be your friend. What's the S word I'm talking about? No, it's not snow. I'll give you a hint. It sounds like this.
Silence.
Yes, that's it. Right? Are you using silence to your advantage? Part of script work is knowing when not to be saying anything. It's not just knowing the right words, but it's also knowing when to keep your mouth shut. Right? We're going to teach you a version of a seller consult that doesn't necessarily have you give the seller a number. Right? You're going to bring information to the table and you're going to ask a question. I'm curious, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, based on all the data that we've just reviewed, where do you believe we should position your home to create as much competition as possible and get you to the closing table as fast as you desire. And then we staple our lips shut or sit on them, whichever is easiest for you. You can either sit on your lips or staple them shut. And we wait for an answer. And for some of you, that is going to be torture. Right? Because silence is hard. However, it's one of the best tools we have to really engage and allow that seller to think and work and do what you're asking them to do. I'm going to say this here. You're going to hear me say it a number of times over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. One of the biggest mistakes that I see agents make is that they don't plan to involve their clients in the conversation. They think that real estate is show and tell. Let me tell you all the things that I know. Let me tell you why I think I'm right. Let me tell you what a great top producer I am. Let me tell you all the wonderful ways I'm going to market your home. Let me tell you the best comps. Let me tell you all this stuff. You haven't engaged them at all. The best agents in terms of results do more asking of questions and sit and wait for the answers. They engage the client. They ask the client to do the work, both on the buy side and the sell side. And the scripts that we're going to give you next week for these consultations will outline that for you. Right? The client has to participate. The client has to do the work and think and ask the questions back. If you're not engaging them, because here's the other thing I've learned. If all you're doing is talking at them, they hear every like ninth word. They're not engaged after a while. They just kind of click you off. It's like, wow, this is a lot of words. When do we get to the stuff I really want to hear? Right? Some of you are sitting there thinking that about me. Wow, this is a lot of words. When do we get to the stuff I really want to hear? I get it. I get it. Especially in a Zoom environment, trust me, it's way more talking than I'd prefer to do. In a classroom environment, we might have a slightly different approach. However, the point remains the same. What else did you hear from Jeff?
I heard that when he was saying how the tone is more important than the words that you're saying.
Yeah, or at least as important, right? At least as important. You can't forget that body language and tonality. They remember that more than the words, right? I think that what percentages did he give? 93% and 7, right? Which is why passion. This might sound a little goofy to you, but it's 100% true. Passion around what you do wins out over almost anything every time, because they feel that. They feel your passion.
Rick,
Yes.
apparently, I guess the FBI, CIA, all these terrorist interrogators, investigators, law enforcement officers, they use this whole mirroring technique in order to make the other person comfortable while they're asking them questions.
They absolutely do, Lisa. Thanks
There's
for
a
bringing that
name
up.
for that. I don't know what it is.
There is, and I will do my best to think of it. There's a great book written on it as well. It's a great sales tool, that book, but it's a book written by, I think, an FBI agent saying, here are the techniques we use in order to interrogate. Obviously, you're not looking to interrogate your buyers and your sellers. However, the techniques themselves are useful in the questioning process, right? If we're consulting people at a high level, we're asking tons of questions.
I guess it's supposed to make them feel, very comfortable and more at ease.
Yeah, there's comfort. Because if you look in your
So they're
book
more
at page,
forthcoming.
if you look in your book at page 36, it says the purpose of scripts, right? And it says a great script is 100% customer oriented and benefits the customer throughout the entire conversation. These are not manipulative words. They're just words that help people get to the outcome that they're looking to get to anyway, right? Oh, Mallory says Chris Voss does a masterclass on this. I don't know who that is. I'm gonna have to look that up.
You know, he's a former top FBI profiler, hostage negotiator. And we watched several of the clips from the masterclass in Jen Henry's coaching a few months ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
He's really great.
Is the book
Mallory,
Never Split the Difference?
Say that again, Jorge.
Is the book Never Split the Difference?
It's not. That's another one. That's another great book, but it's not the one I'm thinking of. I think I have it in the library over there. I have to go find it. Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing is it really keeps me aware and alert. So it's great for them, but it's also great for me because I'm being very attentive to who they are.
Yeah, 100%, right? So remember, consulting at a high level is all about asking great questions. It's about understanding and knowing where you want to go. It's about utilizing scripts to help you get there. Scripts is the framework that you live inside of. And I think one of the things that kind of pushes people away from scripts is that people think it makes you sound robotic. Does anybody have those thoughts? Be honest, right? It makes you sound robotic. It's not me, it's somebody else's words, like all those things. Let me ask you this. Do you think Meryl Streep wrote any of the movies that she won all the awards that she's won over her career? Do you think she wrote any of them? Do you think they're her words? I can give you the answer. The answer is no. She didn't write any of them. They're not her words. She's just talented at taking words that are written for her and then bringing her version of being human and behaving truthfully in a real situation to the table. It's no different. Am I saying that some of this requires a bit of acting on your part? Yeah, I think if you're doing it well, absolutely. Absolutely. Am I terrifying some of you even more? I certainly seem to, right?
I think it's different what Meryl does because like her and any other actor, they're playing somebody who's not themselves, which is different than we walk into a room to have a meeting with a prospect and we're playing ourselves. We're not, so it's a little different.
Yeah, so okay. I don't 100% agree with that. And yet I'll give you that. However, I'll use this example. So you guys have spent almost 6 hours with me in the last couple of days. Is the review that I might receive if this were the entire session, would anyone say that I was robotic or not kind of living in the moment and addressing people in a fashion that actually recognized that we were all humans in the room? Would anyone say that that's how this has been delivered?
Are you scripted?
So would it surprise you that this entire course is just one big long script? I just learned the script and I produce this course 5 times a year based on a memorized script. Now, I know it well enough and I know the industry well enough that if I'm taken off script by a question, I can address that question, maybe go down a bunny trail and then bring us right back to the script. But this course, as your instructor, is a script for me. And so it's part of why people are surprised to know that in real life, I'm not terribly social, right? Now that does not mean I'm not authentic with you. But if given a choice of being in a room full of people at a party or staying home and watching, reruns of Law and Order, I usually choose staying home. Right? I'm not the big high I that John is or that Brett is, right? I've never even met either. Well, that's not true. I met John in person one time, I think, right? But I don't know you well enough, but I can tell, I understand behavior well enough to know that you guys are That's just how you are in real life. I'm not that in real life. However, my role as the instructor and the facilitator of this requires me to raise the level of connectedness to a point where it feels like I am. Go ahead, Barbara.
But you're so, you know everything's, you know your work so well that it becomes an easy conversation. And so no matter how much this is scripted and you've memorized it for all these years, it's also very much integrated into who you are and what it is you do.
Correct. That's exactly right. And so that leads us to, I want to give you 4, well, there's a hand up. Let me go to John and Brett's unmuted. So let me go to John and Brett, and then I'll tell you, I'm going to follow up Barbara's comment. Go ahead, John.
So in today's product,
So John, hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to mute you because we can't really hear
I
you.
learned that
Okay.
there was a guy, I forget his name. Is it a lady?
Yeah, he's breaking up a lot.
Yeah. So the good news is I think it's just an internet connection. I don't think he's actually stroking out on us. I think he's still walking around. He looks well, so that's all good. John, if you can hear us, unfortunately, we were just struggling hearing you. So Brett, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add, I'm a very law and order at the end of the day kind of person too, because you expend so much energy during your day, even if it's just mental energy, which, you know, my God, it's like, no, I turn it off too. It's, you know, you can only give so much in a day.
Yeah, agreed. Carly.
Sorry, half the time I was driving home, so I was just listening. So that's why I wasn't participating. But I feel like that's a perfect example. Like when you asked us if we thought you were scripted right now, all of us would have said no. So it really just goes to show you that the more you practice, which is kind of what he said, like practice every single day scripts, like it just shows you it can come off as like very genuine. It's not that you're not being genuine, but it comes across like it's not scripted. It just becomes like a natural language. So definitely like practice was a lesson from that.
Yeah, and here's so I want to follow up with what Barbara and Carly both just said and give you kind of the 4 stages of script work, right? Because it's important that you understand that it's not just reading words, right? So step number 1, and this is some of this is in your book, some of this you're going to have to write in. It's on page 39. Step number 1 is memorize, right? You do start with, what am I going to put into my brain, right? Scripts to me are just words that work. And I would rather be prepared and armed with words that work in certain situations rather than have to make it up. Now, in all transparency, the first number of years that I was in real estate, I just made it up. I didn't learn scripts. I decided that I knew better. And so I was just going to kind of write my own, and I did it my way. Like Jeff said, at some point I did things very much the same way each and every time I did it. So I was kind of using my own scripts, except they weren't written from a place of knowing anything. They weren't written from a place of any kind of experience. And so when I finally found better scripts and understood that when you have better words to use, you get better results. Again, all honesty, at first I resisted it. Then I resisted it again. And then and I had a coach who said to me, okay, like, why are you paying me if all you're going to do is resist the things I ask you to do? And I thought, yeah, you know what? Got a point there. So I went and I learned scripts, and I started to use scripts, certainly on both the list side and the buy side. And guess what? My results changed almost immediately. Almost immediately. Because when you use words that work, they elicit responses that are more predictable. And so the conversation flows the same or nearly the same every time, and you just get to the end. right? So it starts with memorization. You have to get the words into your brain. But then you move to internalization. So it's memorize, then internalize, which means you have to take it from just knowing it in your brain, and you got to kind of let it seep into your soul, into your body, into your heart. It has to become reflexive, right? When someone says to you, how's the market? The answer is always the same, right? I've been saying it for 22 and a half years. And so I know the answer when someone says, how's the market? The answer is great. Why do you ask? Instead of, well, there's a shortage of inventory and buyers are really frustrated right now. Like, okay, why on earth would you be saying those things to someone who says, how's the market? You have no idea why they're asking, right? Hey, did I ever tell you the story of little Tommy and little Johnny? So repeat offenders here, you know this story. You may not remember the story, but you know the story, right? So little Johnny comes home from school one day. He's 8 or 9 years old, comes home from school, gets off the bus and runs in, and his mother's there doing whatever she's doing. And little Johnny says, mommy, where do I come from? And his mother's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. First of all, I thought I had a whole lot more years to address this. Second of all, I kind of thought his father would tell him this. And third of all, I don't want to lie. So I guess I'll just sit down. And so she sits down with little Johnny and goes through the conversation about the birds and the bees and where he comes from. And like 20 minutes later, she finishes, and little Johnny is sitting there with his mouth open, staring at his mother, has no words, doesn't exactly know what to do with that information. And she says, honey, are you okay? And he says, uh-huh. And she says, honey, I'm curious. What made you ask that question today? And he said, well, I was on the bus and my friend Tommy said he was from Philadelphia. So I thought I'd come home and ask you where I was from. But I'm bummed, right? So what's the point? Had she asked some questions before she just dove into the birds and bees conversation with her 9-year-old, she could have saved herself an entire afternoon of stress. Probably not gone through an entire bottle of red wine that night. Right, but you get my point. So when someone says to you, how's the market? You don't know if they're a buyer, a seller, a potential something or other. What if, right? And the answer, great, why do you ask? The market's always great for somebody. You see how that works? And so the why do you ask then shortcuts the process. And they say, well, I'm asking because my neighbor just put their house on the market and it sold for like $50,000 over their list price. And I was just curious, was that an anomaly, or is the market kind of delivering that? Great question. I'm curious, is there a number that you think you might just decide to be a seller if your house was worth X? Well, yeah, I mean, if I got what my neighbor got, okay, so 750. Would it make sense for us to have a deeper conversation around the value of your home and the benefits of you being a seller right now in today's market? Guys, sometimes we talk way too much. I can't tell you how many times I hear people speaking to clients saying things like, oh, it is so tough to be a seller right now because yeah, I mean, the market's going great, but where are you going to live? There's nothing for you to buy. So are you kidding? Now, it's the job to help describe what arena someone is going to be entering, right? But many of you wonder why you're not getting enough appointments. Well, because you're having the appointment on the phone, or you're shortcutting or short-circuiting the appointment by delivering information that people didn't ask for. How's the market? Great, why do you ask? Well, because my niece is in the market for a condo. Excellent. Why don't we do this? Why don't we set up some time for me to talk directly to your niece so I can understand exactly what her needs are, and then we can walk through the process. If you'd like to be a part of that with her, I'm happy to include you. What's the best way for me to get your niece's information? Hey, I have an idea. Why don't you text both of us right now and connect us, and I'll take it from there. Instead of, how's the market? Well, it depends. If you're a buyer, it's really tough right now. I have so many buyers that I just can't find things for. Man, is it a struggle. Oh my goodness. And interest rates just went up a little bit. So, that kind of sucks too. So if you say all that and then you get to why do you ask, guess what? Uncle Tommy is not telling you that his niece is looking for a condo because he's going to go home and say to his niece, you know what, you probably should wait a year. Doesn't sound like it's a good time to be a buyer. And guys, that's just not true. If you need to be a buyer or a seller today, it's a perfect time to do either of those things. Because the realities that so many people want to talk about are just simply not as true as you want to make them. Right? Have you heard of this inventory shortage that we're in? Has everyone heard of that? Do you know how false that is if you actually look at the numbers? If you look at the numbers for the last 5 years in Fairfield County, we've had the same number of listings each year, except for 2020, because that was the weird anomaly year where we shut down for 3 months. So except for 2020, the same number of listings has shown up in Fairfield County year after year after year since 2017. We don't have an inventory shortage. What do we have?
A listing shortage?
No, because that's the same. Inventory is listings. So when I say inventory, I mean listings. Say it again, Mary. We have a glut of buyers. We have more buyers in the market than we've ever seen. Like I think in all the years I've been doing this, there's just a massive number of buyers. We don't. So all in all, do we have an inventory shortage for the number of buyers we have? Sure. But it's not like we have an inventory shortage where people are not putting their homes on the market. That's not true. And I want you to be clear about what's true and what's not true, not just for the client, but for you and your mindset as well. Because here's what I've noticed. For those of you who want to believe we have an inventory shortage, you're not out there finding listings as diligently as maybe you could or should be, because you've convinced yourself that there's an inventory shortage. Careful of the information that you believe. Ask yourself, is that 100% true? I did the numbers. I know the math. It's not true. Is it impossible to find every buyer a house? Nope. You know how many buyers in Fairfield County actually found a house last year? Thousands. The question is, were they your buyers? Because the only thing that you have control over is how you show up for your clients. You have to come back and say, okay, what different skills do I need? What different scripts do I need? What different expectation setting conversations do I need to have? What strategies do I need to employ to make sure my clients win? It always has to go back to you looking in the mirror and being better. All right, I'm down a bunny trail. So let me give you the last two on memorize and internalize for scripts, and then we'll probably be done for the evening. So memorize, internalize. So now it's in your body. Step number 3, customize. Customize. Now for some of you, you're like, see, look, permission to change all the words. Yeah, that's not necessarily what customize means. You can change some of it if you have to, if it has to fit a different circumstance. However, I would encourage you, there are words that work for a reason. And if you change the words, well, you might be changing them to words that don't work quite as well. Customize to me means have it suit you. Say it the way you would say it. but still say the words, because the words are the ones that work. And then lastly, you have capitalize. So you've spent the time memorizing it, getting into your head, having it become reflexive, having it sink into your bones, then customizing it so that you will say it. By the way, customization simply comes from practice. If you'll practice something over and over and over again, all of a sudden you think you wrote it for you. I can tell you when I've learned a couple of scripts over my career that I was a little bit nervous to say. Those are the ones I had to practice the most. And when I practiced them like a million times, when the opportunity came up for me to actually say it, I didn't stop myself because I had practiced it so many times. I knew what it was going to sound like coming out of my mouth. Sometimes I'd put a pause. Sometimes I'd say it fast. Sometimes I'd say it and then giggle and chuckle to make sure that people weren't hearing it like dun, dun, dun. That's the customization of the words that work, that make it you. So memorize, internalize, customize, and then capitalize. Because when you understand that scripts are your tools, like carpenters use saws and hammers and nails and stuff, right? Scripts are your tools. They are what you use to create income. You have to make sure you know how to use the tools. You have to practice the tools. How often did Jeff say to practice?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day. Every day. I will tell you, he's not kidding about that. He's not kidding. Because practice brings you one of the most important things that you need to do this job well. I'll give you a hint. It starts with a C. It ends with confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah, you got it. Right? Practice brings confidence. And when you are confident, you can do pretty much anything.
Hey, Rick, what is the best way to talk to somebody who's very direct and to the point? I mean, very succinct. They don't want, they want as few words from you as possible.
So if they want as few words from you as possible, give them as few words as
they ask the
possible.
question, they want a 1-2 word answer.
Yeah,
and then
give them that. Meet them where they are, right? Now for some of you, you're like, wait a minute, is there a different way to answer questions besides yes or no? Right? Because you are that direct. If that's not you, that's a struggle then to give shorter answers. Again, you have to meet people where they are because they will hear you from where they are, not where you are. And so if you're gonna answer a question in like 9 paragraphs instead of 1 sentence, and they're that high D personality who wants just the quick bottom line, you lose them after the first sentence or 2 anyway. They're not listening. So you just have to meet them where they are. The other strategy, Lisa, with in scenarios like that is ask another question.
Okay.
Right. So if you were to ask me a question and you were that high D bottom line personality and you asked me and you expected a yes or a no, I might say to you, yes, does that surprise you? Or no, any questions around that? Or no, would you like me to explain? Right, so follow it up with a question because it throws it back to them. And then if they do want more info, they've now given you the permission to expound upon it. And they're more apt to listen, if that helps.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, thanks.
Sure thing. All right, guys, it is 6:01. We are out of time. So here's what's fun. Next Tuesday, we start on source of business. We're going to start in database and open houses, and likely database, open houses, and perhaps expireds, all in that 2-hour chunk of time. What I'd like for you to do for homework is come up with your number. Your number. And what I mean by that is your appointment number. So on Tuesday, when you arrive back here, have your appointment number. Don't make your appointment number anything else than something that makes absolute sense to you. Because I want you to marry yourself to it. I want you to be excited about it. Don't bump it up because, one seems like a small number, or, somebody else said 3. So, before I say mine, I'm going to up it 1. It's not a competition. It's not a competition. Everyone is here with different goals. Be rooted in your goals. Be confident in your goals. Be confident in your this year goals. Maybe you want to earn $1 million in real estate, but if you've been in the business for 15 minutes, that's unlikely to happen this year. So let's set a target for what is likely to happen for you based on what you want for year 1 and grow to that. I'm not saying don't have big lofty goals. What I'm saying is look at last year and say, how am I going to create an increase over last year? If last year you weren't in the business, well, last year was 0 for you. So now you have to create an increase over 0. 0 to $1 million, 0 to 600,000 is just simple. Is it possible? Sure. Is it probable? No, not in my experience. 0 to 100K, 0 to 150K, if you're doing the right things. 0 to even high ones to 2. Yes, absolutely, if you're doing the right things. So bring back your number, and we're going to talk about getting you started on building and connecting with your database. The mastermind will be about how we are currently, those of you who are currently communicating with your database, to throw out some ideas for those who perhaps are not. I'll have my list as well ready, and we'll have a conversation around it. Guys, I hope that is helpful. It was a pleasure to spend time with you this week. I look forward to Tuesday when we see each other again. Don't forget, you have a whole bunch of stuff between now and then. Have a great weekend. I will see you Monday morning at 9 o'clock for our Zoom call. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
you, Rick.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you.
Thank you.